Hey, everybody. Welcome to Turn Your Podcast into a 24/7 online station. My name is Ray Palermo. I am with Radiotomy, and I am joined by Dave Jackson from the infamous School of Podcasting. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Ray.
So, we're going to be listening to this webinar video experience extravaganza are going to know a little bit about you. But for those who don't, tell us about yourself and School of Podcasting.
Well, I've been podcasting since 2005. My podcast has been downloaded over 1 million times. My background is I've been helping people understand technology for over 20 years, going back to the days of what is email. And so that's my kind of, along the way, I've been helping people understand technology. And when podcasting came along, I was addicted because it's creative, it's geeky, and it's just a lot of fun.
That's awesome. We love School of Podcasting. Dave Jackson is also, what's the name of your official title over at their
Yes,
New Media Expo?
I am the director of podcasting at the New Media Expo. If I want to be obnoxious, I'm also the author of the book More Podcast Money and many other fun-filled podcasting things.
More is better. So if you haven't gotten your ticket to New Media Expo, which is coming up here 2015 in April over at that infamous Vegas, do check out the New Media Expo and get your ticket. It's going to be an extraordinary podcasting event. Dave and I have been, connecting around this sort of junction of internet radio and podcasting. I've been in the internet radio space, and we'll talk a little bit about the difference in a minute, for the last 10 plus years. And really excited about this cross between broadcasting and podcasting. And we have put together this how to create a radio stream with your podcast so that you can take advantage of some of the opportunities that are happening in this breakout audio world that's happening all around us. So we wanted to start with really the basics. What is the difference between a podcast and an internet radio stream? And Dave, I'll let you take that first.
Well, the big thing with a podcast is it's on demand. So when I can go to a website, there's their episode right there. I got a big play button. I click on it and I hear that episode right there. So that's the one I want. I can choose and I click that button and away it goes. Internet radio, on the other hand, is I can click play and just sit back in my chair and get comfy. I don't have to worry about what to do when the episode's over. That's the big difference. Is I'll let you now piggyback on me.
Well, I think, what the most important thing to talk about is that you need both as an audio creative. So if you step back and sort of identify yourself more as somebody who creates audio, creative, exciting audio, and I know there are video podcasts, but we're going to talk specifically about audio podcasts today. You want to be able to be everywhere, anywhere. And so if you think about it, a podcast, as Dave said, is an on-demand experience, but you also want an opportunity for people to not only hear you where they go every day, which might be an internet radio directory like iTunes, TuneIn. We'll talk a little bit about them. And hopefully expose yourself to more audience. What's nice about the radio stream is because we are a multitasking world, there is the concept that people can just click once and go on their run or be in the car. And it's your show streaming with different episodes that you program, much like traditional radio. I mean, really, if we think about it, we're going back to the future in that it is a radio model that is pre-programmed. So, and you want the on-demand. You want people to be able to say, okay, I want to start here, and I want to, start at the beginning and go all the way to the end, which is the on-demand model. One of the challenges with the internet radio stream is much like regular radio. If it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you happen to plug into a show, it might be midway through the show. But hopefully the content is engaging enough and that the podcaster is in consideration of that you can, pick up and still enjoy the content. So I think really, like we said, one is on demand, one is streaming, one is in iTunes directory of podcasts, and there's actually an internet radio directory as well where you could show up as a 24/7 stream. The important thing is to really be serious about this. You kind of have to do both, right, Dave?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we go back to, I remember when blogs were big and then podcasting came on and people were like, well, what should I do? And I'm like, well, some people want to read. and some people want to listen. You just have to get your content wherever your audience is and deliver the best value you can, and let them choose where they're going to consume it.
Exactly. And I think one of the exciting things about taking your podcast and moving it into an internet radio stream, we talk a lot about the fact that there's probably many more new audiences that you can pick up that you might not necessarily be getting as a podcast only. We still struggle, and of course, the recent excitement around Serial has changed this. But people still scratch their head and say, "Podcasting, how do I do it? What is it?" So one of the opportunities and one of the whys that you would want to create an internet radio stream with your podcast is to reach some of these new audiences that may or may not just be hanging out in iTunes. And that's an important part. I know that, Dave, you must hear a lot about the fact that podcasters feel perhaps a little lost in the iTunes podcasting 500,000 show directory.
Yeah, we're all battling over, how to get to the top of the list, and the fact that the iTunes search itself isn't the best in the whole world. It's like if you have the word "the" in your title, it will actually kind of act like that's a keyword, and so sometimes just getting found in iTunes can be a bit of a struggle.
Absolutely, and then of course we leave those poor Android users kind of in the dust now, don't we?
Yeah, that's the biggest growth area in the future, because right now Google's just not doing anything for podcasting, so we have to rely on other third-party apps to develop them, and then there's nobody really taking the charge on the Android side, and so that there's a huge amount of growth over there that there's an audience just waiting for content.
And that's the exciting part, with Radiotomy, the internet radio network that I represent and that I've been working with. The exciting part is that you can reach those listeners. So and we'll get into other segments, how to actually create that stream. But once you do it, you're actually able to reach some of those Android users through some of the mobile apps that they use every day, through some of the other what we call distribution networks that come as part of the Radiotomy system and service. So some of the ones you see here, we push out, we talked about iTunes, but again, there's two sections of iTunes. There's actually a radio directory or internet directory that has all the AM/FM stations and many of the pure play stations that you can also get listed on. And I tell you, there is a ton of listening happening in the iTunes Internet Radio Directory. It's pretty staggering. We see the stats and we're constantly blown away by the amount of listening that goes on from that platform. But also TuneIn. TuneIn, 65 million users, I think the last analytics were telling us that this is a fantastic place to be. Now, you might have submitted your podcast to TuneIn. Dave, is that something you talk about in your classes, or?
Yeah, it's one of those places. There are different, kind of phone books, for lack of a better, but they're made for podcasts. And there's iTunes, there's Stitcher, there's TuneIn, and then there's just a handful of little, kind of independent directories that you can list at, and usually takes you, an hour or so to list on all those. And some of those you may, like obviously the big ones you're going to get, there's more of an audience there, but some of these little independent ones you kind of wonder if it's worth the time to copy and paste your information.
Now with TuneIn, when you submit your podcast, is it going to run one after the other, or is it going to stop after the one program plays?
We're back to on demand. You can see there, and you can find my show, and you can click and play on each episode. But I don't believe, I'd have to go in and double check on the app. I'm not sure if one episode is done, if it just automatically goes to the next one or not.
Well, the exciting thing about the stream, with the internet radio stream that you create with Radiotomy, you'll actually be listed as a 24/7 station. And because the meta tag, and we have actually an API that we work with TuneIn, where if people are able to search your name, search your guest, or maybe even your topic, you're going to show up in that search directory. And that's pretty powerful when you've got that many users looking at talk, looking at different segments of the creative marketplace. So the chances of you getting heard in TuneIn are actually pretty high versus something where you might be a little bit lost in some of the other ways that they present content. So that's one advantage, but also mobile. I mean, obviously everyone's talking about the fact that it is all about the mobile device. So we support apps in iOS and Android, and actually just signed a deal with our the mobile company Nobex, that if you hit a certain threshold of hours here, we're going to create your own iOS and Android app directly for your station at no cost, and there's some other revenue opportunities which we'll talk about in a bit. So, but you also show up on Roku, Windows Media Directory, Winamp Directory, Shoutcast Directory, which is actually the biggest platform for internet radio station listings. And Radiotomy, if you don't know, owns both Shoutcast and Winamp. So we have an opportunity to position you in a way that that can be an advantage. But also Apple TV, and we're just about to announce some exciting partnerships pushing your station into virtual reality and some of the gaming atmospheres, which would be kind of interesting. So again, the overall message here is by turning your podcast into a stream, you're going to reach potentially new audiences, but no doubt new distribution networks, that can definitely add to how many people are listening to you. And of course, analytics are followed quite closely with the stream, and we'll be talking in later episodes of this series on the kind of analytics that are available to you as an internet radio broadcaster versus a podcaster. So that's something to stay tuned for. But here's again another why. There's no cost involved. And Dave, I know that was something that intrigued you and probably pushed it to create a stream, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, when somebody comes up and says, hey, I can take your exact same content, publish it for you, and help you grow your audience. Oh, by the way, if you hit certain numbers, we'll actually help you earn some revenue as well. Right now, I'm like, okay, what's the catch? What's the catch? I was really like, okay, and there is no catch. That's the beautiful thing. And yeah, and then the fact that it's 128, it's basically CD quality. So that was the one that I was like, well, even if if my content doesn't take off, I've already got the content. It's not going to cost me a dime. So I was like, all right, I'll kick the tires on this. Why not?
Yeah, so it is your time. I always say, someone had kind of corrected me not too long ago when I said that it was free. Well, they said, well, my time. Yeah, your time absolutely is money, and we want to respect that, but you're not going to have any streaming costs. And if you're not familiar with internet radio, I know that you're familiar with probably your download capacity and some of the bits that you pay for podcasting. But when it comes to streaming, the more you do, the more you pay, and that can get quite expensive as your listening audience increases. So we've taken that component out, so there's no streaming costs. There are no listener limits either, which is exciting. So no matter how big your audience gets, we'll be able to handle their listening capacity, and you'll still see no streaming bill. And we'll talk in a minute why we're able to do that at Radiotomy. But music licensing. Now, I don't know about you, Dave, but I think one of the biggest misconceptions amongst podcasters is, to use music or not to use music. That is the question.
Yeah, they really, everybody wants to use that song that they grew up listening to, or gosh, this fits, and it's a really tangled mess. I know. Number one, the record industry doesn't know. They don't understand podcasting. They don't know what to do. And the fact with podcasting, the fact that you have a download, that throws all the rules out the window. It really messes things up because there's the person that wrote the song, there's the person that performs the song, who in some cases is not the same person, and then you have the record company who owns the masters of those recordings. And the fun part is you have to have all three people sign off on the fact that you can use that. It doesn't matter if it's 10 seconds. It doesn't matter if it's, I talked over it. If you want to try to play with fair use, have fun with that. Just realize that if the record company comes after you, you still have to pay the lawyer, even if you win your case. So it's one of those cases that as a podcaster, I tell people just don't do it. I mean, there are people that have gone through 9 months of negotiating to get one song played. And even at that, the record company kind of goes, well, here's kind of a contract, but we're not quite sure how this is going to work. And it's a shame. I really wish they would. But at this point, the record industry doesn't understand podcasting, and they just get really worried that it's a download. So the fact that you are now free to play whatever music you want is a huge plus.
I think that's exciting part too, because music can add a professionalism and an excitement, and just really allow the content to be exactly what it is that you want it to be. And sometimes it is that favorite tune, that favorite track that you love, that's going to cut beautifully, or it's going to be a great transition between segments, or it's just something you want to play. Now, of course, if you're a music podcast, this is a no-brainer, because
Right.
if you've been running around trying to get everyone to sign off on music, suddenly you can take your indie band, your cool indie band or garage band, and put it right next to a major, major performer, and you'll be good, and your show is going to benefit from that. Plus, your independent artist is going to love the fact that they're cut together with, the published music artists in that genre. So it's a great opportunity to jump in and start, creating some content that otherwise you wouldn't have, because the licensing is very complicated. And, there's
Yeah.
sort of this urban legend out there that if it's under 30 seconds or it's under 10 seconds that you're okay. And let us just say really clearly that is not the case. There is no such fair use law, as many times people say that, on the books. And if they should just come after you, the fees are extraordinary per violation, so
Yeah.
they can hit you.
My favorite was there's a song called Something to Say, which fits very well for a podcaster, and let your life be heard and blah blah blah. I was like, oh, this would be awesome to play. So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to pursue this, and I contacted the record label, and they wanted $300 an episode, and I went, no,
Oh,
no, no, and I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. It's just the chorus, and it's at the beginning, and I'm going to talk over it and fade it out. And they just went, yeah, $300 an episode, and I just thought, okay, am I going to waste 9-10 months to maybe never even come close? I just went, all right, never mind. I'll just stick with my my royalty free music that nobody's ever heard of.
that's the ultimate. Never mind.
Yeah, never mind.
Forget I said that.
Yeah.
And just so that you can talk as a podcaster intelligently about music licensing, because I think this is really important, that you don't feel overwhelmed by it. There is, as David said, people who write the music and lyrics, and also on the internet, people who perform, whether they be the authors of the song or not. People who perform get a performance royalty. So you might have heard of these copyright royalty organizations like ASCAP, like BMI, and then there is the performance organization called Sound Exchange. So what we do at Radiotomy is we cover that for you. So you're able to play what you want, when you want, but you also note that we have to know what you're playing. So there's going to be some steps where you put what we call meta tagging, and some of you might be familiar with the data within an actual audio track that helps us make sure that those CROs are paid and that the artist is paid. And actually as a podcaster, then you can proudly say that you pay artists on your stream, and that's kind of a cool thing to do. So again, no cost to you on the Radiotomy platform, and music licensing is covered. So there might be some fun stuff that you can do there. But again, it is a stream, so you're not going to be able to download the content. So it is that lean back experience. So as we get to wrapping up this first segment of our turning your podcast into an internet radio stream extravaganza, we want to talk a couple more why. Why would you spend the time to do this? Why is it important? Well, again, the 24/7 radio experience is something that a lot of people talk about. They want to lean back. They want to be able to just click and play. And by creating a stream, you give them that opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about revenue. And I don't like it when people show dollar bills in their presentation. So here's my representation for revenue, good old Johnny Cash. So how Radiotomy is able to keep the stream free is that we insert 4 minutes of national audio ads per hour. Our sister company is TalkSpot. They work with all the major publishers and advertisers. So we are able to elegantly, and I'll put that in quotes, insert 2 stop breaks an hour, and we're able to then have 4 minutes total. And what happens there is that basically is paying for the stream, paying for the music licensing and distribution, and of course all the infrastructure that you'll see in creating the stream. But when you hit certain thresholds, we're going to stop and pay you a percentage of that as a, a cashback bonus, I like to say, for participating. And I know, Dave, that podcasters are probably exploring, how often are you asked, how do I make money at this? I'm curious.
Every single day. It's something that creating content is fun, is exciting, but it is at times time consuming. And all of a sudden, if you're putting time in, there are times when you go, "Can I get some money for this?" And it's a bonus when it is. So.
Absolutely. And, more and more podcasts are now picking up advertisers. And a lot of the advertising that you hear on podcasts are what we call direct response or host reads. And, that's exciting, isn't it? That there are more people that are getting paid to do those reads.
Well, the other thing, though, is the fun side that you guys have covered is you guys are finding the sponsors. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we go and we find those national ads that are going to actually play well within your stream.
So with podcasters, unless you're on a big network, you've got to go knock on the doors and make the phone calls and do all the sales calls, and now you've got to track ROI, and it's kind of nice that it's just handled automatically.
And it actually adds some legitimacy to your content. It's interesting. I've seen some podcasters that have created streams or some of the internet radio stations that we work with. When we insert a Walmart ad or we insert some sort of national brand, they find it a little bit easier to have some of those more smaller, niche sponsorship ads come together for them. And of course, they keep 100% of any ads that they're able to sell outside of the 4 minutes that we ask for. So, I do want to stress this is not quit your day job money. Anyone who's quitting their day job to do a podcast, let's just caution them right now.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. Anyone who's quitting their day job to do an internet radio stream, not a good idea. I think Dave and I probably have, both in our work, a kind of a come to Jesus conversation with a lot of folks who think that maybe this is the next big way that they're going to get rich quick. But we want to caution you. However, there are ways that you can start to build some revenue, and starting a stream and getting some cash back is one way to do it. So why not? I'm going to talk just a bit about statistics because one of the other advantages and another why to create to a stream is that we're able to, within the streaming technology, get a lot of information about your listeners. Where in the world, who, how long, where are they clicking off? When is the audience the highest? What content is playing when the audience is the highest? Where in the world? And even we can move into, within the United States, we can get into more zip code areas, and you can kind of see, where your content is thriving, and that helps you again to build other revenue models. What kind of statistics, Dave, do you talk about importance when you're doing a podcast?
Usually, the big number is just how many downloads you get. You can dig in and see, what country and what app they're using. If it's, the podcast app from iTunes, but it's there's a lot of stuff in there. It's always a matter of what of that really counts. Do I really need to know that, I don't know, that they were referred from what website or things like that? And mainly from podcasters. We're just looking at the download number.
Got it. So one of the advantages of starting a stream is that we're able to actually see how many people are listening throughout the 24/7 cycle of your content. So you're going to get daily stats, even hourly stats, to see how your content is doing. And also we're going to show you what networks are you doing well on. Are you doing great in TuneIn and iTunes and Windows Media Player? So you're going to be able to see what platforms are working. Are people listening to you on the mobile app? So it helps you, I think, lean in a little bit more to understand who your audience is. And of course, this is why we're able to sell to national brands. This is why we're able to do that kind of advertising, because those advertisers want that kind of data so they know that they're in the right place. So there's another opportunity for you to kind of get to know your audience through the analytics. And also, finally, one of a big why is live mode, the ability to go live to your audience. Now, there are some other podcasting type solutions out there to go live. But it's kind of nice to have that additional part built into the stream that if you want to do an event or you've got a great guest at a certain time that you know is going to pull a lot of live audience, it's kind of fun. Have you ever done a live podcast, Dave?
Yeah, I actually do one every Saturday, and there is nothing cooler than live. It's highly addicting. It's when I log into the stats of Radionomy and I can see that X amount of people are listening right now. It's even cooler when you can flip a switch and go live right to them and basically connect with those people that are online. So it's one thing to see that they're there. It's another thing when you go out there and connect, and that is it's really addicting. It really is.
Yeah, but I also think that it probably makes some people a little fearful too about going live to the mic because it's definitely different than being able to record something in Skype and cut it later if it didn't work out well.
Yeah, that's true. The ability that whatever you say is now out for everyone to hear. On the other hand, that feedback that you can get, if you have your streaming station and maybe you tell people to go to a website where you have a chat room, now you can actually have them listening to you and getting that instant feedback via chat. That's amazing because now you can, take requests or whatever you want to do. The mic is you're handing it over to your audience and they can now help shape the content.
Which is exciting and fun and thrilling, and it is moving, again, podcasting more into the radio world where things do happen in real time and people hear about it. And what I think what's interesting about live mode is even though you captured it live and then people might be listening to it in the stream or on demand, it still has that flavor and excitement of the liveness, and I think that can be an important component to a podcast that wants to bring in another dimension in what they do. So going live is something that you can also do. So again, we wanted to do in this segment just some real clear ideas as to why you want to spend the time to create an internet radio stream for your podcast. So the radio experience, the revenue, and some responses is a good opportunity. So why create an online radio station with your podcast? Well, we hope today that we have provided some information as to why that is an important opportunity. But let's say you can hardly wait for our next segment, which is how does this change my production of the podcast? Let's say you want to get started right away. Well, we want to help you do that. So whether you want to pop over to radionomy.com/create, start your stream, or perhaps you want to, and I highly recommend, contact Dave and go take some classes and connect with him as a consultant at schoolofpodcasting.com. Any final words here, Dave, for our first segment?
Just don't be afraid to start. It's, so many times we think things have to be perfect or nobody's going to listen to me. We have that imposter syndrome. You don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. And just, it doesn't cost you anything. What's it going to hurt? Give it a shot.
Excellent. I love that. It's great advice. And the worst thing that will happen is people will hear your podcast. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So we're excited again that you're on this adventure with us. And the next segment, we'll talk about how this is going to affect the way you produce your show. And we'll get into some of the more specific ways that you do that on the Radionomy platform. So, hey, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.